Hello, and welcome to the Mobile User Acquisition Show, a podcast to help you unlock tremendous growth for your app. My name is Shamant Rao. I'm the CEO of the boutique growth marketing firm Rocketship HQ and host of the podcast Mobile User Acquisition Show. In each episode, we feature experts in the field of mobile growth and discuss strategies, tips, and pointers from the leading edge of mobile growth marketing. By the end of each episode, you will have gained actionable and tactical insights that will help you make more informed decisions in your own work around growth. The Mobile User Acquisition Show is produced by Meryl Vincent, Content Marketing Manager at Rocketship HQ.
Our guest today is Dominic Coryell, Product Lead at Shopify. Today's episode is a re-release of one of our older episodes from our previous podcast, How Things Grow. Dom founded his first company, Garment Valet, while he was still in college. He then founded Talkable, which is one of the leading referral marketing companies in the world today. The experiences from which we dive into in today's episode. In this episode, we dive into how Dom recommends testing ideas very quickly with minimal engineering effort. Dom gives some great examples, including one where he nonchalantly starts a food delivery business over a weekend. We talk extensively about referral marketing, the invite a friend flows that you see all over the internet that drive tremendous virality and organic growth. We explore why these referral flows work and how some of the smartest companies in the world structure their referral flows so as to make a dramatic difference in their audience growth. This is very much a masterclass on referrals, and I'm very, very excited to share this with you today. Dom, I'm excited to have you here today. Welcome to Have Things Grow.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the invite. Ready to do this.
Let's dive right in. Your first business was Garment Valet. What inspired you to start this?
Funny thing here is I've actually been a co-founder in multiple businesses, and I was not the very, very first person with the idea. In this case, it almost happened accidentally. So I was at college at Northeastern, and I was really strapped for cash. And I saw a piece of paper that said, "Drive for Husky Express." And I expected that this was some giant bus that I was going to get to drive around campus or something and get paid, $10 an hour. And I met this guy who had this very small delivery route for laundry that he had just started. And he was basically picking up laundry for college kids and then dropping it off the next day. And he and I really hit it off. And we talked for about 8 hours the first day. And within the first week, he said something, he was always very stressed out. He said, it would be good if I had more customers. And I kind of took that to heart and, really just started to work on finding more customers. And about 6 months later, that summer, we started a new business called Garment Valet. And I was a 50% owner, and I the CEO for whatever that's worth at a small laundry company. But we took a tech angle, and within a few years, we went from I think $10,000 a year in revenue to over 1.2 million. And so it really did become a company, which was a lot of fun. But it was completely accidental in the beginning.
That's such a wonderful story. I did not know that, even though I've known you for a long time. And I know you grew it to a 7-figure business and expanded it to multiple cities. And even though you helped it grow tremendously, I'm sure it had its challenges. Can you tell me about a difficult or challenging time that you faced at Garment Valet?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the whole time was an uphill battle. It wasn't until my co-founder in a later company really explained things to me. It's like when you start a business, you either realize that you're pushing a boulder off a cliff, which is a good thing, or you're pushing a rock up a hill. And this was definitely a rock up a hill type of thing.
Yeah.
The margins were bad in the laundry business. Nobody wanted to fund it because there was a recent a large company called Zoots in the area that was started by two very senior guys who also started Staples, Todd Krasnow and Tom Stenberg, and they had a massive failure in the laundry business, so nobody wanted to touch it. Mm-hmm. But the biggest challenge that we had was that we couldn't get funding, and we were losing, like $30,000 a month. And we really couldn't figure it out. And we was all on our credit cards. We were in massive amounts of debt as two young guys. And what happened was we realized that the orders that we mapped all of our orders, and we saw that we were losing money on the majority of the orders that we were doing that were not in certain regions. Then we drilled down to those regions, and it sounds like a no-brainer now, hindsight's 2020, but the regions where we were making money was in condo buildings. And that's, of course, because the delivery expense of picking up and dropping off was evenly applied to 20 orders as opposed to dropping off one order at a random brownstone on Beacon Street. So literally we had this plan where we were like, oh, well, we're going to have to nix all of the customers. It was like a 3-month plan, but we were going to be out of business in 3 months if we didn't act like that night. So what we basically did is we just sent an email out to all the customers in the other areas that said, hey, we're sorry, we can no longer service you. And for all of the high-rise buildings, we added on a refer a neighbor program where we actually just gave people credit if they referred somebody in their buildings. And I think within about 45 to 60 days, we were positive 10,000 cash flow, and it completely, it saved the business. So that was really the biggest challenge, and that was how we got past it.
Wow, that's the classic 80-20, but I don't think it can have been easy when you're staring down a ton of credit card debt, and you're still in college, and you didn't have a ton of business or life experience. And I think it is incredible how you turned this situation around. The concept you're best known for is what you've called smoke testing. Can you tell us what smoke testing is and why it matters for startups?
Of all the topics that I've spoken on, smoke testing seems to be the one that is most popular and people really respond to it, and it resonates well with them. And I think it's because it applies so widely across the board, from people who want to start a business all the way to execs at big companies who want to validate or test an idea very quickly. So smoke testing essentially is when you have an idea for a new feature or a new business, and you're not sure if it's going to work, and it will take you lots of time and potentially resources like money and engineers in order to build it, to figure it out. So you find a much shorter way to validate it. And it's very similar to, what it was popularized in the lean startup with a 404 test. The difference is just that it's done in a way where you actually gain a customer list rather than just kind of sending people to a blank page form. So it's really just stringing systems together to see if something is going to work. And it's critical for startups to do that because you don't have a lot of time. And when you hide behind the product roadmap waiting for growth, oftentimes growth never comes, and it can get hijacked and your business is out of business before you had a chance to really to build your customer list.
Got it. So I understand what you mean with the smoke test is that you build a low-fidelity prototype almost that with very minimal engineering resources. Is that a fair understanding of what a smoke test is?
That is a much better definition than I just gave, yes.
Great. I just paraphrased what I understood. I was wondering if you had an example of a company that you worked with that used a smoke test that saw a tremendous impact from a smoke test, just to help our listeners understand the concept in a little more detail.
One fantastic example that I can more clearly outline is the Pigeon Box one, where
Sure.
they sold college subscription. They sold parents of college students subscription boxes of goodies that would arrive monthly for their student. And profitability on boxes is very hard. And lots of boxes were doing this add to box, which is a feature where at the very last minute, you are going to add an item to the box, which of course increases profit because the shipping has already been paid for.
Sure.
Adding this feature was going to take at least several weeks because it had to be designed, it had to be rigged in with the systems. And the problem was that it was already April, so finals were coming around the corner. And if we didn't get this out in a few days, we were going to miss the last box of the year, and then we wouldn't be able to test it, for all summer because of the college market. So we basically just sent an email out to all of the people who had a box going to them that said, would you like to add this surprise item to your box? Click here. When they clicked there in the email, That opened up a browser that then just passed the email as a parameter through the URL into a type form. That type form had a hidden field that collected it, and that did not look like a form at all. It just said success, like we're adding this to your box for $5 or whatnot. Then we just had a list of people who actually did this, and then we went out and just sent that list to the supplier, and then they knew to just add extra items to that box, and then we just manually charged those people in Stripe. So the result was that I think like 40% of the people added the boxes and increased profit, like gross profit per box by like 80%. So then that became a baked-in feature that was part of their product moving forward.
Gotcha. Because actually building this into the product would probably take weeks. You guys found a lightweight way to send out emails that offered pretty much the same functionality, almost as a way of validating and proving out that people actually wanted to add an extra item to their boxes before you actually built it out.
Yep, that's exactly what we did. And there's just, through the years, just countless ways. It's just become a mentality to always find the quickest, the most critical path to getting the information or the result that will lead you to take the next step.
Gotcha. I think that is ingenious. And I think that was such a great way to understand whether something even worked before you actually built it into the product. And when you smoke test and move that quickly, surprising things can also happen. I remember you telling me about this time when you started a food delivery business, and you did that almost nonchalantly. Can you tell me more about that experience?
Yeah, actually, that's right. I kind of forgot about that one. So that was we were hanging out at my friend's house, and we were really, really hungry, and we kept kind of like looking over all the menus, Eat24 and stuff, and we couldn't decide on what we wanted to eat. And my friend just said, wouldn't it be cool if there was an app that just knew what we didn't like, and we could just press, surprise, and it would just send us a surprise meal. And we're like, yeah, that's actually a great idea. Needless to say, we never went kayaking. So instead we bought the domain surpriser.com, and we built a really quick, web page, and we went through a series of different little smoke tests that day using Facebook ads. And about a week later, we had a working prototype, just stringing systems together. And the smoke test there was we basically sent people to a mobile web page that said, are you hungry? Enter your zip code. To get started, people would enter their zip code. And then on the next page, we'd say, surprise, what a surprise, we don't service your area, which was presumably like, okay, because, it was in people entered their zip code, and nobody was going to go back and enter every zip code in the U.S. to like see whether or not we actually, we're a real business. So that had great results. And then we decided, well, how do we take the next step? And we thought, like, well, do we get space in a kitchen? Do we, build a delivery network and go work with restaurants? And the answer was like, we just didn't have time. We all had full-time jobs. So what we did was we basically just hired a team in Pakistan to work with us. And every time an order request would go in, they would go on Eat24 and they would just match something that wouldn't actually be that would match the dietary restrictions. And then we told them, this is the best part. We told them to put in the delivery box, this is a surprise order. Please take off the receipt. Everything we of course had to do a little bit of an upcharge. So if somebody was spending $20 a meal, we would only spend 14 or 16. Please say surprise when the person opens the door too. And we thought, like, there's no chance in hell that this is ever going to work. But when we asked customers what their favorite thing about Surpriser was like overwhelmingly people said, we love the way all your delivery drivers say surprise when we open the door. So that was just an idea of like stringing together like different things. And like, I think we got up to like, it was ramping up to close to maybe like 100 orders before we decided it was just like not profitable and it was a distraction.
Wow. This is exactly the reason I enjoy talking to you so much. So much of what you do almost nonchalantly just blows my mind. After Garment Valley, you started your next company, Talkable. And Talkable, for those of you who don't know, is one of the leading referral marketing companies in the world, with clients like Bonobos, Hotels.com, Gap, and many more. So, Dom, what is referral marketing, and how does it impact companies' growth?
Yeah, totally. So for this type of referral marketing, we were focused on peer-to-peer referrals. So, that's like when you invite your friends and you're both incentivized in some capacity to use the business. So we were not focused on the affiliate style, which is like one to many. It was really more focusing on many to many, and that was, we really hit the peak when this was all starting. This was a business that had the right time because it was really like when all of this was becoming popularized, like right after, Dropbox and PayPal, et cetera, and everybody wanted that type of like model for their business.
Just to jump in, can you just tell people about Dropbox and PayPal very briefly for those of us who don't, those are the people who may not have that background? Totally,
yeah. Well, so like the great story, the kind of the full story here is very greatly illustrated by Sean Ellis in Hacking Growth. But basically, everybody knows Dropbox, the file storage service, and one of the ways that they skyrocketed to fast customer growth was through their invite a friend, where it was like give space and get space. And it worked so well because there's implicit virality baked into the product. Like in order to use the product, there's a great network effect because your folders become better when you can share them with other people and other people can contribute to them. So them and adding an incentive to do that as well on top of it, like just really added fuel to the fire. And so people looked at that and people were like, oh, well, Dropbox was an instant success because of the referral program. We want to just add that to our business. And if you listen to Sean's story in Hacking Growth, it illustrates how it was not just like they didn't just build a referral program and throw it up and it didn't like work overnight. There were tons of iterations, and just like any referral program. But nonetheless, that mindset really helped us. It meant that people started to search for referral programs and that were open to having conversations about referral programs, and that lended itself quite nicely to us being able to market our business.
Got it. Talkable, which was your business, helped companies set up referral programs of their own, similar to PayPal and Dropbox and everything. I'm fascinated by referral programs simply because the refer a friend box is very ubiquitous, but it continues to be very, very effective for companies. Why do you think referral programs work?
Yeah, well, so, referral programs work first and foremost if you have a product that people love. And I think that's one of the things that people forget is that you can't just, tack on virality to a crappy product because nobody's going to share something that they're not, really passionate about. First and foremost, referral programs work when the product is good. The other thing that blocks referral programs from working a lot of times is that there's not enough relevant asks in the customer journey. So you really have to find the right times to ask the customer where it doesn't interrupt their experience, but it's actually complementary to their experience. And of course, like keeping the program fresh,
Sure.
where you constantly kind of like change the incentives, and maybe you actually are using referral mechanics, but people don't necessarily know that it's just a strict refer a friend. Most people don't really like to refer a friend, quote unquote, because it feels a little dirty.
Sure.
So if the invite mechanics can be a little bit more kind of gamified, I found that works well.
Help me understand what that means when you say gamify the invite mechanics.
Yeah, totally. So, I think that like the most successful campaigns are just that, they're campaigns. And so back when I was working with Bonobos many years ago, we used to do these programs several times a year where it was like a tiered reward program. And we would say, invite your friends. When they make their first purchase, you get $25, and you're giving them $25 to make their first purchase. Whoever refers 3 or more friends during this short period of time is going to get an additional $50 bonus. And then whoever refers the most friends gets a free, suit or something like that. And so it was kind of like a contest tied to that. At Grabber, there was a Bali contest. And so I like the idea of like kind of adding in this like contest element or competition with the referral programs. It gives people a talking point about, enter for a chance to win a free suit, et cetera, but it has the referral mechanics tied in, and people earn points and dollars or rewards, incentives somehow just for participating in many different ways.
Gotcha. In many ways, it satisfies people's needs for competition as well as progression, right? And it's not just a, hey, invite a friend. It's, which, as you pointed out, can feel kind of in your face and dirty. And that's so interesting that you can structure a referral program almost by sort of messaging it very carefully. You also said it works best if you surface referrals in the right areas in the customer journey. Can you elaborate on that and what might some of the right areas be?
Yeah, totally. So for repeat purchasers, sometimes even first-time customers, I love post-checkout because essentially that person, usually people are very excited when they make a purchase. Sure. I'm sure there's some products where people are not excited, utility bills. But anytime after somebody's made a purchase, it's exciting. Anytime after somebody's left a good review, sure. Anytime after you've given something for free to a user, so like experimenting with something like a boosted listing and then asking for free and then asking them to invite their friends after that usually increases share rates. Things when the customer feels good make a lot of sense. And then, of course, just making it frictionless. So if you the typical email invite programs usually are kind of rigorous for the user because there's a little box and it says, enter your friend's emails separated by comma, right?
Right.
Which is very I don't know any of my friends' emails by heart.
Yeah.
But if you just send me an email that is worded for myself and for my friends, so that the email itself is like a referral ad that I can just forward from my native inbox, right, where all the contacts are stored, that type of thing increases the likelihood that people are going to share and that their shares are successful. So it's very much like it was interesting because I was volunteering at a dog shelter, and I learned a lot about behavior by doing that during the time when I was working at Talkable. And it was like, you don't train a dog to lie down in one fell swoop. It's like you do little motions and you get them to sit with little incentives, and eventually they learn to lie down. I think referral marketing is actually very similar to that, where it's like you don't train, you have to make the user very successful early on with little bits of feedback and rewards for doing positive actions like sharing, because their first share might not be successful. And if that first share is actually, if they've taken the time to share your brand and then there's no feedback that's positive from that, even if it's just showing them that their friends are clicking and their friends are interested, then they're never going to do it again because they're afraid that they have done something that might damage their network. And so it's very important if you instrument a referral program to make sure that people who share feel the success immediately after they share in some capacity. Right.
So you build in a positive reinforcement loop, when users take an action that is helping you as a brand, they get some kind of a reward, even if it's small. In a referral program, you're paying people to refer their friends. And you mentioned PayPal earlier on. I remember reading that one of the big worries of PayPal at the time was they were paying real money to people, and they were just afraid they might go broke because they were paying out so much money just to get users to start using PayPal. So my question to you is, when you're instrumenting a referral program for a brand, how do you make sure you don't go broke?
Yeah, that's a very real concern. And all referral programs, I don't care what anybody says, are prone to being gamed. Just like any other channel, there's going to be fraud, but specifically in referral programs, there's more of an incentive usually for the fraudsters to kind of stick their head out. So it's extremely important that you have the right tool to kind of track as much of that as you possibly can. The best way to block referral fraud and to prevent going out of business or going broke is to align your incentives with those that a good user would implore. So, for example, don't give away. PayPal did give away free money, and I have no insight as to how that worked for them. It seems like it worked great, but I've had some some horror stories of analogous kind of just giving away money, and if the incentive for the friend, the new customer, is not an incentive that would only attract a top tier customer, then you probably should not give that as an incentive, because you're going to bring in a lot of people who are not potentially top tier customers. So you want to just make sure that that first that incentive for the friend is something that actually is bringing in good, customers with great retention. So it would be like a percentage off of a large order. And there's always kind of like the lever that you can pull, or it's like, well, do we just need more revenue, or do we need more profitable revenue, right?
Right.
And if you just need more revenue, then you can be more aggressive with your deal. If you want the right types of customers, then you can be a little bit more refined.
Got it. You clearly saw a lot of companies that employed referral marketing. What was a company that nailed referral programs that was a total surprise to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was actually a company that signed up. We had a self-service product at Talkable.
Okay.
And so that we had a lot of companies on the platform that we never really were very high touch with, but we would always pay attention to one metric, which was like percentage of sales from referrals.
Yeah.
And that was always a very healthy indicator, of course, that the company was running a good referral program. And then we would look at total sales from that too. And one of the companies, I forget the name of it, but it was a sex toy company, 50 Shades of Grey. And it's just like ridiculously high referral rates, of course, only through email, and through the link copy, where you copy a link and you send it. Like nobody was posting on Facebook, I don't think. But that totally blew my mind, because I would not think that would be something that would that people would be sharing. But
wow,
you don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect people to share about sex toys, especially via email. Do you have any hypothesis for why this happened?
I think it was probably just that there was a community around that at that time, that people were very passionate. It was kind of like a tribe,
Right.
And that it was probably a lot of people who were, friends and enthusiasts and were communicating with each other about that anyway. And then they are just like, oh my God, look what I found, So,
right.
Yeah, it worked. It was a time and a place where it worked well for them.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there was a time and a place and a community where it actually worked. If the sex toy company sees a nice bump in traffic on the day this podcast airs, sex toy company, you're welcome. You can thank us later.
Yeah, you have to use the keyword sex in the title, and your podcast will rank higher, right? Yeah.
This is a good excuse for me to use sex in the podcast title. Absolutely,
Yep.
Dan. Speaking of unlikely customers that you had at Talkable, what sort of companies do you think should never do referral marketing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's two types of companies. Companies usually that are their main competitive advantage is, this is kind of an oxymoron, is price, meaning that they're competing on price. Not that price can really ever be a competitive advantage. And then people, like companies where there's just like a general distaste for user experience or the product. And so I would equate that to like kind of like utility companies, right? And that's probably pretty obvious. I'll talk about the first one. So like online retailers who are actually just like retailers have a very hard time acquiring real customers. They're really acquiring just transactions. And that's because they don't own the brand. They don't have like the value chain that's their own. So for example, Bonobos, of course, like did really well because they own the entire value chain and it was their brand. So it was really the only place that you could buy Bonobos. So like when you transacted, you were in their customer funnel and you were actually a customer. Whereas there's a lot of, electronic stores online where they're selling a commodity, and giving people an incentive off of their first discount or reward is most likely not going to encourage a repeat transaction. And so we found that was very challenging for a lot of, even though they were very big companies, especially like internationally, we found that was very challenging for them, was that the retention from referred customers was nowhere near the ones that own the value chain.
Yeah, if you have to make referral marketing work, you have to be able to own that customer relationship for the long term. Yeah, because otherwise you can't be giving money away to get a one-time transaction. And the other category you said was utility companies. Why do you think referral marketing does not work for them?
Well, I mean, I guess one reason is it seems like it's kind of like a monopoly, like you have to have it. So I guess they don't really have a customer acquisition problem.
Right.
I'm just trying to think of like companies that you transact with where you don't actually, you're not happy to do it. Any time you feel, upset that you're spending money on something is probably not a good time to ask people for a referral
Sure.
incentive. Yeah.
Sure. And I think that goes back to what you said earlier about asking for a referral when a customer has had a good experience. A customer's just made a purchase, she's very happy, and that's when you ask, hey, would you like to invite a friend? If a customer is just annoyed, it's probably not a good thing to ask.
Yeah, totally. And so this apex of post-checkout is a very debated topic in the referral community.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a very big community there, but
Sure.
When somebody checks out and you show them an overlay that covers the receipt page,
Sure.
And it asks them to invite their friends, you have a lot of people in the UX camp who say, well, that's a terrible user experience
Right.
because like, what happens if they're a new customer? They haven't actually tried the product yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking them to share. Maybe they want to see the receipt page, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you look at the numbers, though, programs that have that overlay, in my experience, have a 5 to 10x higher referral rate than programs where they just put it in line on the receipt page.
Sure.
So that means a huge difference, 5 to 10x,
Sure.
the number of referrals that come when you show it in a light box. So this is like, maybe you can't really measure the damage that you're doing, though, by like, is this annoying people, right?
Sure.
But the numbers of sales like really like speak for themselves. So that's kind of like a push-pull thing that's an interesting dynamic when it comes to post-checkout that I thought I'd mention.
Sure. And I think that dynamic of aesthetics versus business, I think that's always an ongoing debate in any field, in any space. What do you think separates a good referral program from a great one?
Yeah, so that's interesting because first I think you have to separate what your definition of good is. Is it good
Sure.
because it performs so well, or is
Sure.
it good because it has like all of the correct mechanics, right? So a referral program that I think performs amazingly
Sure.
is Airtable.
Mm-hmm.
And just in general, like super enthused by the Airtable product. Like I think the team is amazing. Everything they do is like they're using their product as a joy. And I think that's why their referral program works so well. And it has that same Dropbox-esque where like using Airtable improves as you have more people in your sheets.
Sure.
You get incentives for all of that. So like I have so many incentives like racked up in my Airtable account. I don't think I'll ever pay for it, right?
Okay.
But I think the mechanics of their program are actually quite like not so great. Like landing experience, like mobile. It's not mobile optimized, but somehow the product is just so good that it works. So that's a good program from a performance standpoint.
So what does Airtable make? I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like smart spreadsheets. So it's like you take the dynamics of the base and you make it.
Got it.
User interface is great.
Got it.
Then this has become an advertisement for Airtable.
Sure.
So now when you look at like mechanics, I think that probably like the most refined, best in class referral program I've ever seen is Uber's, and I think that they've just done such a fantastic job of really using the data that they have and customizing the entire experience, putting it into the customer journey in the right way, knowing which of your friends are actually on the platform versus not on the platform, so you don't like spam people who are already there. That is like those are like perfect. There's room for improvement, I'm sure, but like those are like perfect mechanics. I'm sure it also has really good performance for them too.
Gotcha. In terms of the mechanics, Uber just customizes their referral experience so that referrals reach people who are most likely to want it.
Yeah, totally. That's definitely one part of it, but also the experience for the person who's coming in is very customized. I think Airbnb has done a really good job of that too, where like friend landing experience is very customized. And it's very clear the incentive that you get for referring a host versus referring a guest. And that it didn't used to be that way. It used to be very confusing. So they put a lot of like into that. And I think there's a lot of, I kind of forget some of the gaming companies that have done this, but there's lots of really great ways to use, I'm sure you'd probably be more familiar with this, is use the cell phone, look at cell phone data of the contact list.
Right.
And if you look at somebody who, so for example, like I was, there was an app, Down to Lunch, I think it was called, and they were, they showed me the people who I should invite, and Dave McClure would always show up at the top, probably because his number was in so many more people's phones. They had all that, so they knew that he was an influencer of some capacity, so they were prompting everybody to invite that the person whose phone number was showing up in the most number of records on their database because they wanted that person to expand their, So I think there's some very interesting dynamics that you can do there.
Right. So it's almost like you can mine the social graph just to understand who is the most likely to respond positively, right? And it also sounds like with a company like Uber and Airbnb, they look at every single touch point for their customers and just optimize the hell out of it. What are some of the common mistakes that companies make with referral programs?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that probably not having things optimized for mobile, not understanding the empathetic part of where a customer really wants to share your product, showing the referral program in the wrong places, not having the incentives correct. That's really one of the biggest ones is if you're going to just incentivize one party, it usually, based on the data that I've seen across tons of programs, it usually makes sense to incentivize just the friend because people who are earning an incentive in just themselves tend to feel spammy. So I think largely around incentives. And I think also when it comes to incentives, really understanding lifetime value of your customer, because if you have a very high lifetime value of your customer, you can afford to give a really great incentive. Right. And then that's going to really, of course, there's a direct correlation usually with the higher the incentive, the higher the performance of the program.
Sure.
Then the last thing too is that when people think that referrals is just a customer acquisition channel, because you can use referrals to activate customers, to re-engage customers, and of course the retention mechanics of referral programs. Referral programs can really boost value and increase retention of the existing user. So referrals really touch the entire part of the funnel. So that's that would be one of the larger mistakes that I think people forget when building out their growth model.
Gotcha. Another aspect of Talkable that I'm so interested about is that I know that you guys saw quite a bit of international growth. How did you see referral behavior change outside the U.S. compared to the U.S. market?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we noticed the most was that people were using the link share, so copy this link, a lot more than they were using your typical email share or your typical Facebook share. And I think that's because there's a lot of localized social networks and boards and forums and things like that we were not privy to, or that didn't make sense to build into the referral program. And so people were using that. And so it was always interesting to kind of track on those landing pages from those URLs, initial referring URL, and then see kind of can we slice this and make this a better experience for people who are landing.
Gotcha. There were local social networks, there were local online spaces that it was just hard for you guys to just see sitting in San Francisco. And I would think that's just a hard problem to solve with a centralized team.
Yeah, it's very challenging when it's so international. Our first international client was a company called Market VIP, and we were very excited to have such a big client at such a young age. But everything was in Arabic. And so our first localization was in Arabic.
Okay.
But I would not recommend to anybody who's not a native Arabic speaker to do your localization in a language that's that different.
That you also write from right to left, right?
Yes.
So it's,
everything was different. Yeah.
That would be very confusing for sure. Yeah. Great, man. We are kind of reaching the end of our time together. Before we sign off, can you tell people what you're up to now, about your role at Grabber, and tell us more about how people can find you and find out more about you?
Yeah, totally. Well, so Grabber is a fascinating company that has completely taken over my mind space. And it's a global shopping platform that helps people all around the world find products that they love, but they can't easily find locally, which is really a huge problem. And we match travelers to those shoppers who are going their way, who earn a small reward from the shopper to bring it in their suitcase. So think of like, Airbnb for suitcase space, essentially. And this is a behavior that's been happening globally for years. We're just trying to make it more transparent and like safer and easier for people to find the products that they love. And so it's super fast growing and really great team, and just really enjoy working on that project.
Nice. That sounds like, it's such an interesting business model that makes so much sense when I think about it, because that kind of behavior just happens with expats all the time. People go back to India taking electronics, taking chocolates, stuff like that. People bring back food from India, bring back local artifacts from India. So I think that you guys are definitely tapping into something that's very prominent as a cultural trend. And hopefully you guys are able to crack it, and you're able to magnify it even more. Can you tell people more about how they can find out more about you and where you're available?
Yep, totally. So I have lots of free courses on distrodom.com. And I have another program called Gimme Growth, which you have graciously taught a lesson of mobile retention in.
Sure.
And also just to, if people want to just reach out via email, my email is just dom, D-O-M, at grabber, grabr.io. And I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Wonderful. And I can just tell everyone that Dom is very, very generous with his advice. I've sat around a dinner table with him, with a couple of people, and he's basically unlocked a whole lot of ideas for businesses that he's just heard about. So he's very open to all of this. This has been wonderful, Dom, as always. And we have to catch up when we are on the same coast next. All right?
Awesome. Yes. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
For more tips, pointers, and strategies from the leading edge of mobile user acquisition, subscribe to our YouTube channel right here, or check out our blog, rocketship.hq.com/blog.